is always vital to keep track of the players you should be stashing on your bench for a rainy day. Maybe that's because of injuries or bye weeks. But if you want to be successful in fantasy football, you need to be using your bench as a breeding ground for potential breakout players. And that is exactly what I'm going to do for you guys in this video. I'm going to give you guys a list of the players that you can stash on your bench for later down the line of the season where they can turn into real breakout type players. And if you do end up getting any value from this video, make sure to drop a sub because I post these kinds of videos every day. But you guys know I absolutely hate wasting people's time in these videos, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the very first player to stash on your bench and make sure you got for the later half of the season, and that's going to be Devon Achane. And I'm going to be quick with this one because it's going to be pretty hard to get him right now. He just came off a 51-point fantasy week. 4 touchdowns, absolutely crazy game. He's rostered in pretty much every league at this point, but if you can get him and you want to trade for him, let the hype die down for a couple weeks. We need to be stashing him on our bench not because of the 50 points and 4 touchdowns, but because of the usage split. Achane came out in his second ever NFL game splitting carries with Raheem Mostert 50-50 and saw the majority of the rushing work, 18 carries to Mostert's 13. Now we can't take this game completely out of context because of the Dolphins masterclass they just put on the Broncos scoring 70 points. But behind all of that, we saw a guy that led in carries and got a ton of usage early in the game that was not garbage time snaps. So you can't blame his amazing performance on garbage time blowout game. But on the other hand, we do have to be realistic. This game does not make him an instant RB1 that we need to be starting every single week. He's still going to be splitting carries with Raheem Mostert in a pass heavy offense. We do need a bigger sample size to completely evaluate him as a fantasy prospect, but we don't need time to wait and see that he's going to be a premium handcuff behind Raheem Mostert. And I say premium because Raheem Mostert is a guy that's a 31-year-old running back and has had injury concerns for the entirety of his career. So I think you can see where I'm going with this. I don't have to build on it anymore. Not to mention that historically teams get rookies more involved after their bye week, especially rookie running backs. So later down the line of the season, why would they not name Achane the starting running back over a 31-year-old Raheem Mostert that's probably going to retire in the next few years? If you can't get Devon Achane, go ahead and grab Roschon Johnson while you still have a chance. And I'm sure if you guys have been around this page long enough, you know exactly what I'm going to say here, so I'm going to make it short and sweet. Roschon came out in week 1 and saw 39% of the snaps, and everybody was claiming, oh, this is garbage time, it doesn't mean anything, he's not going to be involved in this offense. And then he came out in week 2 and upped his snap share, and came out in week 3 and upped his snap share again. And yes, maybe some of it was garbage time, but this entire Bears offense is operating in garbage time. If you have Khalil Herbert on your team, I would definitely be panicking. Roschon's led in carries, he's led in targets out of the backfield. Is he going to overtake Herbert and be a complete workhorse? No, Herbert hasn't really shown us enough to be overtaken and phased out of this offense completely. But what we do know is that Roschon's going to have a considerably higher floor because of his pass catching upside every single week. And if you're on a team that is never going to get in the red zone and score a lot of points, that pass catching PPR upside is what you want to have. And that's also great because the Bears are going to be down in pretty much every single game they play, so they're going to have pass heavy scripts. Not to mention, if the Bears are not competitive for a playoff spot later down the line of the season, what's holding them back from completely unleashing a rookie running back to see what they have? And again, it's a historic fact that teams get their rookie running backs more involved after the bye week. So if we get our hands on a potential pass catching RB1, we're going to sit on that bench spot as long as we can. Worst case scenario, he doesn't turn into anything and we drop him anyways. And as he gains value down the line of the season, you could always trade him for a guy that has a better fantasy playoff schedule later down the line. But the next guy we need to be stashing on our bench and holding for later down the line of the season is Quentin Johnston, and this one might be coming a little bit late. We've been talking about him for a couple weeks, but now it's being accelerated due to Mike Williams' ACL injury. He's going to be out for the remainder of the season. This makes Quentin Johnston the wide receiver 2 or 3. And obviously this news is going to cause these Chargers wide receivers to skyrocket up in value, but you still have a few weeks to take advantage of this. And that's because Palmer is going to start out as the main wide receiver behind Keenan Allen. It's been said by staff. It's just a known fact at this point. But that's not because Quentin Johnston doesn't have talent. It's more because Palmer has more experience. Johnston hasn't showed a whole lot to start the season to be that wide receiver 2 immediately, so you have a couple weeks before he overtakes him to buy low. And then you can hold him on your bench because later down the line, he will overtake Josh Palmer and be a pretty integral part of this offense. But moving back to another running back we want to be stashing on our bench, and that man is Zach Charbonnet. We were talking a bit about him on this page earlier before preseason, but his rise to being startable is going to be a lot slower than some of these other guys. We were sitting back and waiting to see when the Seahawks would start to implement him in this offense, and that's slowly starting to happen before our eyes. Again, as we see with a lot of these rookie running backs, he's been increasing his snaps every single week and saw a season high 43 last week. And believe it or not, Kenneth Walker has been splitting this backfield for the entirety of the season. It just doesn't look like it because of how efficient he's been and how many fantasy points he's had. And by no means am I saying Zach Charbonnet is going to overtake Kenneth Walker. That's not going to happen. But he is a real threat and a real player. He's going to carve out a role in the receiving game. That is exactly what the Seahawks drafted him for. Walker will continue to own the goal line work. That's not going to be debatable. But later down the line of the season, we could see Zach Charbonnet really have a high floor in the receiving game because this offense is pretty high powered already. But again, he's a lot slower of a breakout kind of guy. Keep your eye on him for the next couple weeks. in week 5, if we continue to see his usage going higher and higher, then we could consider picking him up because they have their bye week in week 5. And that could really kickstart the usage of Zach Charbonnet in this offense. He sees a lot of snaps right now, but he isn't really converting it into rushes or targets. So if you're in a bit of a deeper league, go ahead and get him. And if you're not, just keep an eye on him. And the next guy we need to be getting on our team to stash for the later end of the season is Jameson Williams. And the reason for this, he has really low value because a lot of people don't know what they're expecting with him. He's been suspended for 6 games. He's just now getting allowed back in the facility. He's been out of the news and not talked about for a really long time, and that's lowering his value. So you could get him on your team for another waiver player essentially. But we can't forget that he is a crucial part of this offense. We saw the role that Josh Reynolds had in week 2, really efficient down the field deep threat, and that is the exact role that Jameson Williams has. And that's an aspect that the Lions have really been missing and struggling without. We've seen him in a really small sample size be efficient, and he's essentially what all of us wanted Kadarius Toney to be. Now he will start slow even when he does come back and start playing, so that gives you even a little bit more time to go get him. But this wide receiver 2 role is completely his when he comes back and gets fully going. We can't forget that he was a first round pick in the 2022 draft, and it really isn't going to cost much to get him on your team right now, considering the amount of untapped potential he really has. But another guy we need to be stashing, and I never thought I would hear the day, is Derrick Henry's backup Tyjae Spears. And nobody really expected this. Spears came out and saw 57% of the snaps in week 1 off the jump as a rookie running back, and he's continued to hold that usage. Derrick Henry has never really been involved in the pass game, and that could be a role that he clearly cuts out for himself. Derrick Henry will still have the goal line work and everything in between, but if he can't score a touchdown, Derrick Henry's going to be a little bit scary every week. But this is not about Derrick Henry, this is about Tyjae Spears. And the reason he's such a good hold is because every time the Titans go down in a game, they start utilizing him. This is not a good sign because their offense looks very, very bad, and their team is not going to be winning a whole lot of games. Now, Derrick Henry is dealing with some minor type of turf toe that's keeping him off the field a little bit, but if Spears is working alongside Derrick Henry down the line of the season and they're not competitive for a playoff spot, why would they not hold back a rookie running back to see what they have when they have a 30-year-old Derrick Henry not needing to play for anything? And Derrick Henry has a history of doing this. Not to mention that the Titans have a super easy fantasy football playoff schedule. Now, I'm not saying he's going to end up being startable by then, but you never know. Not to mention, if Derrick Henry were to miss time, he is the only running back in this backfield that's going to get carries, and he could be a workhorse like Derrick Henry. Now, obviously, this is just something you have to keep an eye on because Derrick Henry could realistically just see everything else in this offense if they stay competitive. If you can lock up a bench spot with Tyjae Spears, especially if you have Derrick Henry on your roster already, he could end up being a really valuable piece later down the line. You might as well say you got him before anybody else. But that is going to finish off this video. If you guys did enjoy, I seriously appreciate you finishing it all the way through, and I'll see you guys in the next video coming soon.